Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Higher Ed Careers, a podcast from Herc Jobs. I'm Jessica Wise, the co-executive director and director of programs at the Higher Education Recruitment Consortium, also known as Herc. This show is designed to help you explore, launch, and grow a career in higher education. Each episode features insights from higher ed professionals and HR experts who share real stories and practical tips for navigating the higher ed job market. Today, I'm so happy to say that we're joined by JD Jordan, Desktop Support Manager in Information and Technology Services Department at the University of Michigan. JD oversees desktop support operations for multiple teams at the University of Michigan, delivering technology solutions for campus stakeholders. A former U.S. Air Force captain, he led IT professionals across global assignments, bringing leadership, technical expertise, and a mission-driven approach to supporting students, faculty, and staff. JD lives in Michigan with his partner and their two sons. When he's not shuttling his boys to their various activities, he enjoys Rubik's Cubes, puzzles, DIY projects, and cheering on Detroit sports teams. And we also have heard mac and cheese in there too. Um, we're excited to welcome JD and hear more about his career journey. Thank you, JD. So good to have you here today.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate.
All right, we're going to jump right in. And we want to know a little, gave a little bit of an intro there, but we want to hear about your role and where you work and what you do every day.
Sure. And once again, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and talk about higher ed and careers in higher ed. So I am currently the desktop support manager at the University of Michigan, working for the Information and Technology Services division at the U. My role is to manage three desktop support teams, and we're set up in a geographical hierarchy where multiple units across campus look to us for desktop support services. So printing, network, end user support services. So how do I get Zoom to work? Things like that. Me and my team, we make sure that the students, faculty, and staff across campus have a support system to lean on when they need it.
That's great. And tell us a little bit about your career journey. We just touched on your Air Force career, but how you transitioned from that into this role.
So it's actually pretty funny. I was a student employee at the University of Michigan working in the physiology department, and I was a student helper. One of my mentors, Bob Topping, he would bring me in and show me how to install software, how to set up computers. And so when I transitioned into the Air Force, I spent my 7 years there. And Bob reached out to me when he heard that I had separated from the Air Force and said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I said, sure." And
Wow.
in 2008, the economy wasn't doing so well, so I felt it was a blessing to have someone reach out to you for a very good position in higher ed. And so my career started there at the hospital. I worked with the medical school doing desktop support. And from there, I just started. I assume they said I did a good job because they promoted me several times, and here I am today, a manager of three teams.
That's it. And I think for our, especially for our younger or first experience folks, those networks and mentors, that relationship is really valuable. And I love that it came back and really helped you connect with a career that it seems like you're enjoying quite a bit. That's a really great message to hear. I want to talk a little bit about your experience in the Air Force and how that has transitioned into your role at the university.
Uh, it has given me a great foundation for being a professional. I think one of the problems that I had as a high schooler was I didn't know how to like work. I knew how to like be given a task and to do a task, but things like waking up on time and arriving at a place and having a boss and having coworkers. Um, Once I joined the Air Force, I realized like, oh, so when your boss tells you to be at work at, 6 a.m., they actually mean 6 a.m. And you should probably be there around 5:55 just to make sure you're there on time. But it gave me a foundation of how to be a professional. I think the military is a great institution for developing young people into professionals and setting them into the world to use that experience to do amazing things for great institutions. You get a crash course in how to be, professional, how to accomplish tasks, how to work in teams, how to do hard things, and how to overcome adversity. And so I got a lot of experience with handling challenging things, leading people, working in teams, knowing when to voice my opinion and when to just say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and accomplish the mission that I was given.
That's great. I was going to ask next about what you wish managers or folks that were doing in the hiring position knew about veterans. And I think you covered a lot of that, but is there anything else that kind of a misconception about veterans coming into the workplace that you want managers to know?
I think one of the misconceptions about veterans is that we're a monolith, that we all are, we have a high and tight haircut and we walk in square corners. Um, but one of the things that, I think we need to communicate better to society is that veterans are just a microcosm of the broader population. Um, and I think it's a group of people who all joined an institution to do a common thing, but we all have different cultures, different backgrounds, different belief systems. And when we get out of the military, it's not like we just left all of those things behind. They still make us who we are and how we operate in the world. We just have a different perspective of how the world works and how our experience in the military shaped us to be employees, to be fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, all the various, rainbows of being a human. We still have those, but we just have a different take on how things work from our experience in the military.
That's really helpful. And I think that's, with all of our employees, we want to make sure people don't kind of get pigeonholed into something. And that's a good message for managers to hear with veterans as well. So if we're going to flip that question and think about what do you want veterans to know about higher ed, what are some of the big takeaways from your experience?
Sure. Um, I would say higher ed is probably the easiest transition from the military. When I joined the military, they take care of everything. They tell you what to wear, they provide you health insurance, they tell you where to go, what to do. It's you can just walk in, and as long as you know how to follow instructions, you can do it. And so when I got out of the military, I was 30, 31 years old, and I never knew about health insurance. I never knew about copays. I didn't know about paying for a lot of the things that, you just take for granted when you're in the military. And so higher ed, um, and I'm speaking from my experience at the University of Michigan, a lot of those same things of setting up a 401k and a retirement account, life insurance. I knew nothing about life insurance. Health insurance, while you still have to sign up and you still have to pay for these things, a lot of those things are already, hardwired and set up for you. And so if you're looking for something where it resembles the security and safety of a large institution like the military, I think higher ed definitely affords you those opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really good point because we know a lot of our veterans and military families are also looking for, they might still have TRICARE and other services, but things like educational credits, we know that's highly valued with that population, and it's not necessarily something other organizations are able to offer. So salary may not be, kind of the same, but there's these broader benefits. So you
Mhm.
talked about you talked about healthcare, pensions, things like that. And you also mentioned the stability, and like the stability of the calendar has come up in a
Oh
lot of our
yeah.
conversations versus a corporate cycle of turnovers and things like that.
Yeah,
All
one
those
of the
pieces.
nice things I love about the institution I work for, the University of Michigan, is that they are really big on education. So it's similar to the university where you have, all the different programs for um, advancing your education. Um, Higher ed institutions also have those types of programs for their employees and sometimes even for the employees' families where you get preferential treatment for admissions or you have tuition assistance programs, things like that that resemble those programs in the military.
Hmm. What are some of the, I'm not sure if I want to ask cultural similarities or cultural differences, but
Oh
maybe
yeah, let's do it. I
yeah,
love
let's do it. Okay, so
it.
either one of those or even just like misunderstanding. So let's talk about culture fit, maybe.
Well, I will say one of the most frustrating things I had when I got out of the military was all the talk, all the
Yeah,
discussion,
yeah,
all the debate. And you have to it takes some time. But you have to train your brain to understand that the military is an institution that is all about giving, receiving, executing orders. And actually in the enlisted oath, it's I think it says, obey the orders of the president and the officers appointed over me. Nowhere in there does it say ask questions about the orders that the president gave. And so one of the things that I had to get comfortable with moving into higher ed was the fact that, the raison d'etre, the purpose of higher ed is to question. It's to seek answers. It's to be skeptical, not to just take things at face value and just go with it. And so there is a lot of debate. There's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of skepticism that you would never see in the military, or you would not be in the military very long,
yeah,
because it's an organization that you give orders, you take orders, and you execute those orders. But in higher ed, uh, working with faculty and students, you can't just say this is the way it is, and the rankle on my shoulder is why it's going to get done. And I think it's actually beneficial because it forces you to come up with the best solution to a problem, and most importantly, be able to articulate and to communicate that decision. And when you are able to communicate that decision, it usually forces you to kind of second guess yourself and figure out, hey, yeah, this is what I'm thinking, but can I communicate it in a way that other people will understand it and be able to execute it?
yeah. That is a big difference, and we see that also even in as early as the interview process, where some veterans are hesitant to ask questions in that process because they usually get an assignment and then you figure it out. But it's a cultural difference. So just reminding that that questioning part is really important.
And
And then
and one thing about interviewing that is
yeah.
huge for veterans, that's huge. When you're going up for, awards or boards or anything like that in the military, you stand at attention. You don't look the person in the eye. You look in the distance at, some painting on their wall, and you're locked in, and you give yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am answers. That doesn't work very well outside the military. People find it to be very odd and weird. And so one of the things I try to tell veterans is that you have to learn to be able to communicate and not just give an answer. You have to be able to, uh, the kids call it now, you got to have some riz. And you have to be able to give your answer in a way that shows not only that you have a grasp of the question and you can give an answer, but you can communicate it in a personable, friendly way where someone's having a conversation with you and not just interrogating you for, questions or
Yeah,
answers, I
yeah.
should say.
Yeah, and that balance, it's not a bragger if you're explaining what you've done and accomplished, right? And that feels bragging is not culturally appropriate in the
No, no, it is
military for
not.
most cases. And so having to switch that around and be able to tell that story it can be hard, I would imagine. It's a big change. It's a
It,
big,
it's
big
huge. It's
shift.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's misconceptions around kind of the alignment between the military and higher ed, and kind of tell me a little bit about your experience coming into that space. Did folks know that you were coming in as a transitioning officer? What was your experience? What was the kind of environment that you were coming into? What was that experience like?
People knew I was coming in because my boss knew I had
Hmm.
been in the military. But I would say no one treated me unfairly or I didn't get pegged with a, hey, this guy's from the Air Force, any kind of thing like that. But I think it did come out. I did get called very what is direct, sometimes
Hmm.
abrasive. Um,
Hmm.
but it's part of that transition of knowing that, in the military, I don't want to have the conversation. I don't want all the flowery prose and I don't want you to make me feel all, good about your answer. I just want the information so then I can go and do what I need to do. But in the civilian world, and even in higher ed, I think more so, uh, part of the discovery of a solution or attacking a situation is that conversation, that back and forth, that making someone understand how you feel about a thing while also answering the question or providing a solution. And so you have to be a little bit more charismatic with your responses. And so I had to learn to do that because it's off-putting. And in the civilian world, um, it's all about relationships. And I'm not saying it's not in the military also, but it's the way you are perceived, regardless of your position, can influence how people approach you and want to work with you. Whereas in the
Hmm.
military, if you outrank everyone, well, y- you're gonna get what you need done
Yeah.
because you can send them to jail if they don't do it. But you have tools in your tool belt to get things done and to incentivize compliance. Whereas in the civilian world, it's a little bit more touchy-feely, and you have to be a little bit more pragmatic and um, a softer touch with how you approach people.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit on the hierarchy too, because the other thing with higher ed is it's not always obvious where either power or information is. So there is a little bit more detective work too that you have to go through when you're making decisions. Like, who do we need to talk to? Who holds that information? It's not always as obvious. And that can be kind of interesting, and you figure things out that you, like you said earlier, that you might not have known if you kind of just plowed through, right, without looking every which way. So yeah, that
Yeah,
creates a lot of creativity within
yeah.
that.
Yeah, in higher ed, sometimes the person who you would perceive based off of title uh, as the I guess least powerful person in the room, well, knowledge or ability sometimes trumps rank and
Mhm.
title. A lot of times in higher ed, and I think this goes for any institution, the person that can get things done is usually the person that is not in the meeting.
Yeah, too often, too
Yep.
often. I want to dig a little bit into IT because it is such a space that folks, may not even think about roles within higher ed. And, we know that a lot of people, and we've heard this from a lot of veterans say, well, I'm not a faculty member. I don't have my PhD. I'm not higher ed material, but we have every position that you could think of that keeps a base functional or keeps a city functional, from police to IT to contracting to healthcare workers to educators to, on and on and on. But let's dig in a little bit into the IT space and really think, can you tell us the alignment that you found there and what experience you brought from your Air Force experience into the IT space?
I think the IT space it's a unique profession. When you think of a doctor or a lawyer or any of the major professions, you have to go to school. It's impossible for you to gain the knowledge that you need to execute, to be certified, to be able to practice that profession. Whereas IT, the information's all out there. It's all on the internet. It's all, you
Mhm.
don't have to. I mean, some of the most successful IT people in the world didn't go to college, and they didn't actually uh, learn how to do it in some sort of institution. They basically just learned it on their own, and they played around with it. And so one of the things that I think is really helpful for um, anyone, not just veterans, but anyone in the IT space, is you really have to like it. You really, I mean, I know people that always say, I want to be a security professional. I want to get into IT security. Um, but you have to like it because it's something that you kind of have to eat, breathe, and just sleep all the time because there's so much. It's constantly changing. There's never like a checklist of how to do a thing that is the one way. And so you have to always be learning. And so one of the things I do when I hire people, I ask them, what's the nerdiest thing you do? Like, what is that thing that you do that is IT related? And I like people who like to play video games, or people who have built their own computers, or people who like, things that show that you have a passion for the career field, because there's no way that you will be current and be able to be, continuously successful just doing it from 8 to 5. It
Mhm.
has to be something that you've integrated into your day. Are you the person like I get my partner, she gets on me because we have probably 2 times the number of TVs in this house than people. And the reason I do that is because I wanted to have a TV that has, art on it. And so I connected that to my network, and I have art displayed on there. And it's all these things that, while yes, that's not my actual job, but all the things and the skills that I'm learning connecting those devices, or building that computer, or making sure that my gaming rig is set up properly, they translate to IT, and it shows that you have the ability to seek out the way to solve the problem, but then also you kind of like it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that it is something that I think is also unique to higher ed, is being able to show that passion. Is We talk to so many hiring managers that really want to see the skills, but then also kind of that connection to either the mission or the job functions or whatever else it might be, the field, and to keep current. And the fact that that's kind of celebrated as part of the role, not just get it done, but the what's
Yeah, oh yeah.
behind that. Yeah.
One of the things I mean, I will never knock education, but I do understand that certifications and education play a big role, and it shows that you have experience with a thing. But have you done the thing? And that's the thing that I want to know. And I think for entry level, it's really important for you to have those certifications because it shows that you have checked the box. You have been exposed to certain types of technologies or IT um, things. But what have you done with those certifications? Did you get a certification 15 years ago that's not current anymore? Or did you get a certification and then you got a job, or you did something? Yeah, I even think people who, do the whole Bitcoin rig thing, or they go out and they build a thing, or they start a website on their own, and maybe it fails. Maybe they start up a e-commerce business selling t-shirts or something, and they have to go and configure their site. Things like that really show not only that you have the aptitude, but you kind of have the passion to do these things. And so I would never knock certifications, but I would really want to preach to people that getting the certification just shows that you've been exposed to the information, but that practical real world experience is what people really want to see.
That's really good advice. And I'm thinking about the conversations I've had with a lot of military spouses too, where there's a lot of, because it is hard to get positions, timing and all that. But getting the certifications is important, but then the demonstration or the application of those certifications. And like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be something that was wildly successful, but just the fact that you tested it out is such a great example of
I
how to put it in the real world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would even say, and I know sometimes people um knock it, but I was 31 years old, having 7 years in the military. I was making really good money as a captain with 7 years experience. And when I got out of the military, I took an entry-level job,
Mm-hmm.
a job that probably, someone out of high school would have taken. Um, and I mean, fortunately for me, I didn't have a family and I didn't have all the other stressors of providing for anyone but myself. But if you have the ability, don't be afraid to take an entry level position. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let the salary or, the title or things like that dissuade you from taking that entry level position. Especially in higher ed, because there's so many different positions that are available. And I hear this all the time. Getting your foot in the door is the hardest part. Once you're in the door, once you're in the organization, that's the time where you can prove, like, oh, I can do all this stuff right here, but I can do more. And so what you do is you do your job, you do it exceptionally well, and you show people like, hey, I can do all this. I'm bored. I can take on more responsibility, give me more. And trust me, it's a lot better to hire somebody internally because I know you, I know what you're capable of, I've seen you. Whereas someone external, you're taking a little bit of a risk. And so in higher ed, I know we would rather hire somebody where they're a known commodity and we know what they can do and what they've done and promote them up through that channel than hire someone external. So don't be afraid and don't scoff at entry level positions. Yeah, if you have a family and you need to make a certain amount of money, I totally understand that. But if you're able, take that entry level position and then prove yourself once you're in the door.
Yeah, I th that's such a good point in terms of like the career growth potential too, going to different divisions or whatever it is, and then and people tend to be supportive of that. But I think sometimes, um, yeah, getting yourself ready for it and really putting that as your goal. So figuring out the places, can you be on a committee? Can you have a leadership role? What can you do to position yourself for that next position?
And the
That's
world
crazy.
loves a volunteer. Whenever there's that task that uh, no one wants to do, be the person that raises your hand because that shows people like, oh, yeah, nobody really wants to do this, but they chose to do it. And then
Yeah.
that's the time where you can prove yourself. And people love that. I mean, I know I prefer people that will take the hard task or the undesirable task and hopefully, they do it well and you get rewarded for it.
Especially if it aligns kind of like what your trajectory is. And
Yep.
yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to do kind of two last questions here. One is if there were things that higher ed could do better for veterans, let's take a moment and think about what that could be. So how could higher ed serve military and military spouses better?
I think and I can't speak to this because I'm not in this space, so I don't know if we do this or we don't. Um, and I know the veterans assistance unit on campus does a pretty good job of this. So I'm speaking more in broad terms and
Yeah.
not as it applies to the University of Michigan. Um, but I think this goes not just for higher ed, but I think one of the biggest problems when it comes to veterans is that we've become this very isolated cohort in society. If you look back in history, you'd see veterans walking down the street in their uniforms and everyone knew who they were. And we don't see that anymore. And so it's an organization where, there's probably tens of millions of people who have served, but you don't know who they are. And I think finding opportunities to find out who are your veterans? What did they do? How have they contributed not only to higher ed, but to their communities, to the broader world? I met someone that I actually helped while I was in the military, and she was a little baby. And it was during a conflict, and her family
Oh,
was
oh,
repatriated from Lebanon, and I was at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, and the things that I did helped her and her family get back to the United States in safety. And I remember we just kind of happened to talk about it, and she was like, "I was there. I was a little kid," and I was like,
oh
"Oh, I
my
was there
goodness.
helping out, set up health." Those are the stories that I think help link us to veterans. And
Yeah.
so the only way you can do that is to identify and to speak to and to bring veterans in closely, because there are a lot of stories and a lot of experiences that I think we all could benefit from hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important, not just like you said, not just for this specific topic of our webinar, but society at large. I think we lose the connection to mission and the connection to service, and that hopefully people can find an environment in higher ed where that comes back in big and small ways. We know veterans really enjoy things like being able to mentor the young students because it mirrors what they were able to work with young enlisted individuals. And so that's a story that we don't always tell. And your story, where it's, even to a bigger degree, is really powerful. So
Yes.
societally, I think what you're talking about is a big piece of this and more than just higher ed. But I love the idea of higher ed being a landing zone for veterans to be able to talk about the mission and the alignment and the greater good and connection back to society. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if you could give one piece of advice to a service member or family member that's thinking about a move into higher ed, what would that piece of advice be?
Do it. But no. No, I love it. I love it. The university, uh it keeps me young. I have students that work for me, and sometimes I'll go and talk to them, and it's just like, wow, this is the biggest thing going on in your life right now. I am so jealous. But what it does is it shows you that there is a new generation coming up. There's the people that think they've got it all locked in. They're on their way, and they're just starting out, and some of them have more of a grasp than others, and some have no clue at all. And life hasn't jaded them. It has, they don't have divorces and parent deaths and all the things that, we take on as we get older. Um, and it just reminds you of the beauty of innocence, and the how fantastic all the possibilities that their lives can have. It keeps you young. And then they're just smart. These are people who have all like joined this institution to get a degree. Now, some, hey, I just want to get a job and I want to make lots of money. Some are super altruistic and they want to make the world a better place, but you get to see them all. And it just makes you feel good to be a part of something that is building young people to be, positive members of society. And I love it. I truly do. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of the University of Michigan, because we have a major hospital. We have some of the leading institutions in the world. And you get to see all of these different things just because you work at a really nice school. And I am so fortunate to be a part of ITS, and my workspace is the team I'm on, because I get to see all that and they pay me for it.
I love that so much. And then I just think back, like what you said earlier about things, learning how to be a professional and all these things that you're probably giving right back to those students, right? So you're getting a lot from that exposure and kind of connecting to the mission. But then
Mhm.
those students are learning from you just by observing you, and I'm sure the lessons that you're providing for them, and that sort of, we don't always have that as much anymore, that community and kind of intergenerational exchange and learning from each other. And higher ed creates that in a way that I don't think there are many opportunities for that in the world anymore. So it is a really exciting space to be in. Makes it more than just the clock in, clock out feeling, that it's kind of bigger than that. And I know a lot of our job seekers across, whether they're in higher ed or not, are looking for something more than, and that's where that maybe that work-life balance comes in. Yeah, work is going to take up X number of hours of your day, most likely, but is it going to give you back that joy that we just saw from you? It's
Yeah,
really
you hit
wonderful.
the nail on the head, community. I
Yeah.
think I think if you can find a place that will help you support your life and your family, and you also gain community while you're doing it, you gotta stay. I'm here until they ask me to leave or until I'm not able to do the job anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. JD, thank you so much for this conversation today. I think you covered the kind of the tactics and the what to do, but then also really kind of pulled back the curtain on the why folks should look at higher education. A very big thank you to JD for being a part of today's episode. If you're exploring, starting, or growing a career in higher education, please visit hercjobs.org for job opportunities, career resources, and more to help support your next move. Join us next time on Let's Talk Higher Ed Careers for more real stories, practical advice, and inspiration from across the higher education community. JD, thank you for today. Thank you for your service. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.